At my grandson's birthday. My chair was gone. My daughter-in-law smirked. Oh, we must have miscounted. Everyone laughed. Nobody stood up for me. I walked out in silence and canceled the checks. I had been the one funding it all. Have you ever felt so utterly invisible, so completely used, that the people you loved most wouldn't even save you a chair at a family celebration you paid for? That day, at my grandson's birthday party, something inside me didn't just break, it snapped. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that everything was about to change. I should have known the moment I stepped into that backyard, honestly. Every detail screamed expensive. Blue and silver balloons, a superhero cake that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill, tables set just so. And guess who was footing that bill? Me. Always me. But as I walked towards the main table, the one where my son, David, his wife, Nova, and my grandson, Byron, were supposed to sit, my steps faltered. I counted. 7 people, 6 chairs. My heart did a little skip. Then Byron, my sweet 8-year-old, in his pristine Spider-Man costume, yes, I paid for that too, without being asked, came running. I hugged him tight, inhaling that comforting childhood smell, trying to push away the unease. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I whispered. "Are you having a good party?" "The best," he beamed. "Did you see the bounce house? Mom got a magician coming later." Of course she did. Nova never did anything halfway, especially when someone else was picking up the tab. "Harriet, you made it." Nova's voice cut through the air, honey sweet, but with an edge I couldn't quite place. She glided over in her designer dress, the one she'd charged to a credit card I helped pay off last month. Her smile was perfect practiced. "We're so glad you're here." I gestured to the table. "Where should I sit?" For a split second, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not embarrassment. Not concern. Satisfaction. Then she gasped, pressing a manicured hand to her chest. "Oh my goodness, I'm so embarrassed. We must have miscounted when we set up." Miscounted. As if I were some last-minute addition, an afterthought they'd forgotten to plan for. My chest tightened. "It's fine," I heard myself say, though it felt anything but. "I can grab a chair." Nova waved a dismissive hand. No, don't be silly. There are plenty of seats at the other tables. You'll be more comfortable there anyway." Closer to the bar, she chuckled, and a few adults awkwardly joined in. Then David, my son, appeared, sliding his arms around Nova's waist. He looked at the table, then at me. I waited for him to speak up, to ask why his own mother didn't have a place at his family table. Instead, he just offered a weak, apologetic smile. "Sorry, Mom. You know how party planning gets crazy." Nova's been so stressed trying to make everything perfect for Byron. Stressed? Planning a party with my money had stressed her? I stood there, feeling the other guests arrive, parents I didn't know, dropping off children who would eat cake I'd paid for, while I, the grandmother, was exiled to the strangers' table. "Of course," I said quietly, though I understood nothing. Not really. What I understood, with a dawning horror, was that this wasn't an accident. The chairs had been counted carefully. 6 for the people who mattered. None for the woman who made it all possible. I walked to a smaller table, setting my purse down next to a woman scrolling on her phone. Around me, the party roared on. Kids shrieked in the bounce house. Adults chatted, wine glasses in hand. From my lonely perch, I watched them. Nova held court, gesturing animatedly, making everyone laugh. David, utterly absorbed in his wife's performance, nodded along. Byron sat between them, happy and oblivious, the little prince of this carefully orchestrated kingdom. And I sat alone, watching it all from the outside. My phone felt heavy in my purse. I pulled it out, my fingers trembling slightly as I opened my banking app. Mortgage payment. Car payments. Byron's school tuition. Nova's credit card. Payment after payment, month after month, year after year. All this time, I'd thought I was helping. I thought I was being a good mother, a good grandmother. I thought my money was buying me a place in this family. Instead, it had bought me invisibility. I sat through the magic show, through the cake cutting, through the endless rounds of happy birthday. I watched Byron blow out his candles, wishing for more toys I'd probably end up buying. When the party finally wound down, I hugged him goodbye. Thank you for my present, Grandma. I love the Lego set. You're welcome, baby. I kissed his head, breathing him in one last time. Then I looked up to see Nova watching us, her expression unreadable. Thanks for coming, Harriet, she said, her voice perfectly cordial. I'm sorry about the seating mix-up. Mix-up? The word tasted like ash in my mouth. I drove home in silence, every moment of the afternoon replaying in my mind. By the time I pulled into my driveway, a strange, quiet calm had settled over me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was done. Inside, at my kitchen table, I scrolled through my bank account. Transfer after transfer. Payment after payment. Thousands of dollars every month, flowing out to support a family that couldn't be bothered to save me a chair. Methodically, one by one, I deleted every automatic transfer, every recurring payment, every financial tie that bound me to people who saw me as nothing more than an open checkbook. When I was finished, I closed the laptop and leaned back. For the first time in years, I smiled. Tomorrow, they would start to understand exactly what my love and support had been worth. 3 days later, the first call came. I was watering my tomatoes. They, at least, appreciated the care I gave them when my phone buzzed with David's name. I let it ring, but the calls kept coming. David. Nova. Even Byron's school, probably wondering why tuition was late. I ignored them all. Instead, I spent the evening with a bottle of wine and a calculator, adding up something I should have done years ago, how much my family's love had truly cost me. The numbers were staggering. It started small, as these things always do. When David and Nova first married 15 years ago, they were young, struggling. Just help with the wedding, David had said. Just the deposit on the house, Mom, until we get on our feet. 15 years later, they were still on my feet. Mortgage payment, $2,347 a month for 8 years. Nova's luxury SUV, $651. David's contractor truck, $492. Byron's private school tuition, $1,200. Utilities, insurance, groceries, Nova texting me receipts with excuses about unexpected expenses, another $800 to $1,000 a month. Credit card payments, minimums on balances that never shrink, $500. Vacations, Disney World, beach house rentals, weekend getaways Nova constantly posted about on social media, always so grateful for family who support our adventures. Another $8,100 per year when averaged. Medical expenses, clothes, home repairs. Over the past 5 years alone, I had given them nearly $400,000. My late husband's life insurance. My savings. My retirement fund. For what? To sit alone at a stranger's table while they laughed with their friends? I poured another glass of wine. I had been an ATM with feelings. Nova was brilliant at making her requests sound like favors to me. I know how much you love spoiling Byron, she'd coo, hinting at some expensive toy. We just want to make sure he knows how generous his grandmother is. Or for herself, I saw this dress. It would be perfect for Byron's school play, but it's a little out of our budget. You probably think I'm silly for caring so much, but I want Byron to be proud of his mom. She made me feel like the generous grandmother, the woman who could afford to help, who loved them so much she wanted to share her good fortune. David was just as manipulative, but in a different way. He played the struggling son card. I hate asking Mom, but Byron's counting on this vacation and Nova's been working so hard. As if I were the solution to problems they'd created. The worst part? I'd bought into it. Every payment had felt like love, like I was taking care of my family. I'd even felt proud when Nova posted photos of their beautiful home, their happy family, their perfect life. Look what love can build, I'd think. What I'd built was a prison of my own generosity. My phone buzzed again. David. This time I answered. Mom, what the hell is going on? His voice was frantic, angry, accusatory. The mortgage payment bounced, and Nova's car got repossessed this morning. Not worried about me, just angry the money had stopped. Hello, David, I said calmly. How are you? How am I? Mom, we're in crisis mode here. The bank called about the mortgage. The school wants Byron's tuition, and Nova's crying because they took her car right out of the grocery store parking lot. What happened to the transfers? I took a sip of wine. I canceled them. Silence. You canceled them? What do you mean? I mean, I went into my bank account and stopped all the automatic payments. It's quite simple, really. But you can't just do that. We depend on that money. And there it was. The truth he'd never said out loud before. I know you do, I said quietly. That's the problem. Mom, look, if this is about the seating thing at Byron's party, Nova explained that was just a mistake. She feels terrible about it. A mistake? Even now, he was lying. This isn't about one party, David. This is about the fact that you've both become so comfortable taking my money that you've forgotten I'm a person, not a bank account. That's not fair, Mom. We appreciate everything you do. Do you? I interrupted. Because from where I sit, I'm only valuable when I'm useful. When did you last call me just to see how I was doing? When did you last invite me over for dinner that you paid for? When did you last treat me like your mother instead of your financial advisor? He was quiet for a long moment. Mom, you're being dramatic. We love you, you know that. But you can't just cut us off like this. We have obligations, responsibilities. So do I said. And my first responsibility is to myself. I hung up before he could respond. Within minutes, Nova's text started buzzing. Harriet, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this is cruel and unfair. Byron is going to suffer because of your selfishness. We never asked you to help us. You offered. You can't just change your mind and destroy our lives. I'm calling your doctor. This isn't normal behavior. You're not thinking clearly. I read each message with growing amazement. In Nova's mind, I was the unreasonable one. I was cruel. After years of taking my money and treating me like a second-class family member, she genuinely believed she was the victim. But it was her last message that made me laugh out loud. What are we supposed to tell Byron when we have to take him out of his school and sell the house? What were they supposed to tell Byron? Maybe they could start with the truth that they'd lived beyond their means for years, funded by a grandmother they'd taken for granted until the money dried up. Or maybe they could tell him that actions have consequences. As I got ready for bed that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: peace. For the first time in decades, I wasn't worried about anyone else's problems. Tomorrow, they'd escalate. Nova would probably show up. David would keep calling. They'd try guilt, anger, manipulation. But I wasn't the same woman who'd left Byron's party 3 days ago. That woman had been desperate to belong. This woman had learned the difference between being loved and being used. And she was never going back. Nova arrived exactly 1 week later. I watched through my living room window as she got out of a taxi. Apparently, she hadn't managed to get another car yet. She was dressed for battle, the black dress that made her look serious and responsible, minimal makeup to appear vulnerable, her hair pulled back. I let her knock 3 times. When I opened the door, her face crumpled into what I'd learned to recognize as her performance tears. Harriet, thank God you're home. We need to talk. I didn't invite her in. I stepped onto the porch, crossing my arms. What can I do for you, Nova? My question seemed to throw her off balance. She'd expected me to usher her inside, offer tea. What can I do for you? She repeated, her voice rising. Harriet, you're destroying our family. Byron cried himself to sleep last night because we had to tell him he might have to change schools. Is that what you wanted? To hurt an innocent child. There it was, the Byron card. She always knew which buttons to push, and my grandson was her most effective weapon. What I want, I said calmly, is for you and David to take responsibility for your own lives. Nova's face flushed red. Responsibility? We've been working our asses off trying to build a life for our son. You think this has been easy for us, asking for help? You think we enjoyed having to depend on you? The lie was so brazen it took my breath away. You enjoyed it enough to do it for 15 years. We didn't have a choice, she screamed, noticing my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, paused at her mailbox, clearly listening. Nova lowered her voice, but the venom remained. David's business has been struggling. I've been working part-time so I could be there for Byron. We've been doing our best with what we have. And what you have, I said quietly, has always included my money. So much so that you forgot it wasn't actually yours. Nova's mask slipped completely. You offered. Every single time you offered. You said you wanted to help. You said you loved taking care of your family. Don't act like we forced you. She was right. I had offered. But she conveniently forgot the hints, the sighs, the carefully crafted stories about Byron's disappointments, the way she made me feel selfish if I didn't immediately solve their problems. You're right, I said. For a moment, she looked relieved. I did offer. And now I'm unoffering. Her face went white. You can't do this to us. We have obligations, contracts. The mortgage company doesn't care about your hurt feelings, Harriet. They want their money. Then you'd better figure out how to give it to them. With what? She shrieked, abandoning all pretense of control. David's barely making enough for groceries, and my job pays peanuts. You know our situation. You've always known our situation. And there it was, the crux of it. I had always known their situation. They'd built a lifestyle they couldn't afford, expecting me to fund it indefinitely. Maybe you should get a better job, I suggested. Maybe David should expand his business or find additional work. Maybe you should move to a house you can actually afford. Nova stared at me like I'd suggested they move to Mars. We can't just uproot Byron. His whole life is here. And David can't just magically make more money appear. But I can. I asked. Is that it, Nova? David can't make more money, but Grandma Harriet can just keep writing checks forever. That's different. You're retired. You don't have the same pressures we do. Your house is paid off. You don't have a child to think about. I have a grandson to think about, I interrupted. And what I think about is what kind of man he's going to become if he grows up watching his parents take advantage of an elderly woman and call it love. The words hit her like a physical blow. For a moment, she was speechless. Then the tears started again, but these looked real. How can you say that? We love you, Harriet. Byron adores you. You're his grandmother. And yet you didn't save me a seat at his birthday party. She flinched. That was a mistake. I told you we miscounted. Stop, my voice was sharper than I'd intended. Stop lying to me, Nova. Stop lying to yourself. You didn't miscount anything. You deliberately excluded me because you've gotten so comfortable seeing me as a wallet that you forgot I'm a person. We stared at each other across the chasm that had opened between us. I could see her calculating, trying to figure out what approach might work. The tears weren't effective. Anger had backfired. Guilt wasn't landing. What was left? Fine, she said finally, her voice cold. You want to play hardball? Let's play hardball. You cut us off and you'll lose Byron. You'll lose your son. You'll lose your whole family. Harriet, is your pride really worth more than that? The threat hung in the air like a loaded gun. She was betting my love for Byron would override everything. 6 months ago, she would have been right. If loving Byron means funding your lifestyle, I said quietly, then maybe I need to love him from a distance until he's old enough to understand the difference. Nova's mouth fell open. She'd played her ace, and I'd called her bluff. You're going to regret this, she said, backing toward the taxi. When you're sitting alone in this house with no family, no grandson, no one who cares about you, remember that you chose this. I watched her drive away, my heart hammering. The threat wasn't empty. She would absolutely try to keep Byron away. David would go along with it, as he always did. But as I stood there on my porch, something unexpected happened. Instead of the crushing fear I'd expected, I felt relief. Because Nova had finally shown me who she truly was, and who David had chosen to become by extension. They weren't my family. They were people who'd been using me. And when I stopped being useful, their true colors had shown immediately. Real family doesn't threaten you with exile for setting boundaries. Real family doesn't punish you for refusing to bankrupt yourself for their comfort. That evening, David called. His voice was tired, defeated. Mom, please. Nova told me about your conversation. She's really upset. I imagine she is. Look, I know things got heated, but we need to work this out for Byron's sake, if nothing else. What exactly do you want to work out, David? I want my family back together. I want you to be part of Byron's life. I want us to find a way forward. For a moment, hope flickered. Maybe David was different. What does that look like to you? I asked carefully. Well, Obviously, we can't just go back to the way things were, but maybe we could work out some kind of arrangement. Maybe you could help with just the essential things. The mortgage, Byron's school. We could cut back on everything else. The hope died. Even now, he was still asking for money. David, I said softly, do you understand what happened at Byron's party? It was a misunderstanding. No, it wasn't. Your wife deliberately humiliated me in front of a room full of people, and you stood there and let her do it. After 15 years of paying for your life, I wasn't even worth a chair at the family table. Silence. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry, Mom. I should have said something. I should have defended you. Yes, I said. You should have. But you didn't. And that tells me everything I need to know about where I stand in your priorities. But we can fix this. We can make it right, with my money. Mom, that's not. He stopped, catching himself. It's not just about the money, is it? Because every solution you've proposed involves me continuing to pay for your lifestyle. I could hear Nova in the background, her voice sharp. I have to go, David, he said abruptly. But, Mom, please think about what you're doing. Please think about Byron. The line went dead. I sat in my kitchen, staring at my phone. I realized something that should have terrified me, but somehow didn't. I might never see my grandson again. But I also realized something else. I'd rather lose a family that only valued me for my money than keep paying for the privilege of being treated like garbage. For the first time in 15 years, I was free. And freedom, it turned out, was worth more than all the money I'd ever given them. The silence started immediately. Not the peaceful kind I'd been craving, but the deliberate, punishing kind that felt like being erased. My phone, once buzzing constantly with demands disguised as family communication, went completely quiet. No, good morning, text from David. No photos of Byron from Nova. Nothing. I told myself this was what I wanted. I'd bought my freedom, and silence was the price. But as the days stretched into weeks, the quiet began to feel less like peace and more like punishment. 2 weeks after Nova's visit, I ran into Janet Morrison, Byron's former babysitter, at the grocery store. Mrs. Holloway, she called out. How's little Byron doing? The question hit me like a physical blow. How is Byron? I had no idea. He's doing well, I managed. Janet's face lit up. I heard about the school situation. That must be so hard, but at least you'll get to see more of him now, right? Silver lining and all that. My blood ran cold. School situation? Oh, having to transfer to public school. Nova mentioned it when she called to see if I could help with after-school care. She said it was just temporary while you all figured things out financially. Janet's expression suddenly shifted as she registered my confusion. Oh no, you didn't know. I fled to my car, hands shaking. They'd really done it. They'd taken Byron out of his school, the school I'd paid for, and I was learning about it from a teenager in the cereal aisle. That evening, I drove by their house. What I saw made my chest tight with grief. The for sale sign was bad enough, but it was the details that broke my heart. Nova's flower boxes, once overflowing, were brown and dead. The lawn, usually manicured by a service I'd paid for, was overgrown. David's truck wasn't there. But worst of all was Byron. I could see him through the living room window, sitting alone on the floor in front of the television. The room looked emptier. They must have sold furniture. I sat in my car, watching his small figure, and felt like the worst person in the world. This was my fault. I'd done this to him. My phone buzzed. A Facebook notification. Nova had posted a photo of Byron at a school carnival. He was smiling, but it was a forced smile. The caption made my stomach churn, Byron being brave at his new school's fall festival. Some changes are hard, but we're grateful for the fresh start and the people who truly care about our family. #blessed, #new beginnings, #ReaFamily. The implication was clear. I was the villain. I scrolled through more posts, each a carefully crafted narrative of their hardship. Photos of Byron helping to pack boxes, captioned with something about teaching him the value of hard work. A picture of Nova at what looked like a diner, wearing a uniform. New job, new adventures. Sometimes life takes you in directions you never expected, but we're grateful for every blessing. She'd gotten a job, a real job. David appeared in photos too, looking thinner, more tired, but working. Building a deck, painting a house, doing actual manual labor. Part of me felt proud of them, but a larger part felt sick watching how they'd turned their newfound work ethic into a martyrdom narrative, with me as the cruel grandmother who'd abandoned her family. The worst part was Byron. He looked smaller, quieter. In one photo, he was reading a library book in a shabbier living room instead of playing with the expensive toys that had once cluttered their house. I wanted to call him, to tell him Grandma missed him. But Nova had made it clear, contact would only happen on her terms. And her terms seemed to be never. 3 weeks later, Mrs. Patterson, my neighbor, called over the fence. "Harriet, dear, are you all right? I've been worried about you." I was surprised. We'd been neighbors for 5 years, but were never close. "I'm fine, thank you. It's just, well, I haven't seen your family around lately, that sweet little boy who used to help with your flowers. Is everything okay?" The kindness in her voice nearly undid me. "We're taking a break from each other," I managed. She nodded knowingly. "Family can be complicated. My daughter and I went through a rough patch a few years back. Sometimes space is healthy, even when it hurts." "How long were you taking space?" "About 6 months. Longest 6 months of my life. But we needed it. Sometimes you have to lose people to realize what you actually mean to each other." That night, I lay in bed, Mrs. Patterson's words echoing. 6 months. Could I survive 6 months of this silence? What if it lasted longer? What if Byron forgot about me? But then I thought about that birthday party. 15 years of payments, taken for granted. Maybe some losses were worth the pain. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Through my peephole, I saw a woman I didn't recognize, middle-aged, professionally dressed, with a kind but serious expression. "Mrs. Holloway, my name is Sarah Chen. I'm a social worker with Child Protective Services." My blood turned to ice. "Is Byron okay?" I opened the door with trembling hands. "Byron is fine," she assured me. "May I come in?" We sat in my living room. We received a report expressing concern about a child's welfare. The caller suggested that a family member might be withholding financial support that's necessary for the child's well-being. I stared at her. "Someone called CPS because I stopped giving my son money. Can you tell me about your relationship with your grandson and his parents?" I took a deep breath and told her everything. The years of payments, the birthday party, the threats, the manipulation. Sarah listened without judgment. "Mrs. Holloway, you're not legally obligated to provide financial support for your adult son's family." The caller seems to have misunderstood how these things work. "But Byron is suffering because of my decision." "Is he being fed, clothed, and housed?" "Yes, but not the way he was before." "Then he's not suffering. He's adjusting." "There is a difference." Sarah closed her notebook. "Children are remarkably resilient. Often more resilient than the adults who worry about them." After she left, I sat alone with her words. Byron was resilient. He was adjusting. Maybe this was exactly what he needed to see. That life doesn't revolve around money. That families don't exist to support each other financially. That love isn't something you buy. That evening, I made a decision. I wrote a letter to Byron, not to be sent now, but to be kept for when he was older. In it, I explained everything. Why I'd made the choices I made, how much I loved him, and how I hoped someday he'd understand. I sealed it in an envelope and put it in my jewelry box next to my late husband's wedding ring. Someday he'd have the whole story. Until then, I would wait. And I would try to learn something I'd never been good at, how to love someone without trying to fix everything for them. The silence continued, but it felt different now. Less like punishment, more like preparation. I was learning who I was when I wasn't defined by my usefulness to others. It was harder than I'd expected, but also more freeing than I dared to hope. The truth came from the most unexpected source, Marie Ricks, Nova's former best friend. I hadn't spoken to Marie in over 2 years, not since she and Nova had their falling out. So when she called me on a Tuesday afternoon, for months after my family had cut me off, I almost didn't answer. "Harriet, it's Marie. I hope you don't mind me calling, but I think there's something you need to know." Her voice was hesitant. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Marie looked older, tired. She ordered her coffee black and got straight to the point. I heard about what happened with you and Nova, about the money situation. I tensed, expecting another lecture. What about it? She's been telling people you had some kind of breakdown, that you became paranoid and started imagining slights that weren't there. Marie wrapped her hands around her cup. But I know that's not true. Because I know what she really thought about you. My heart started beating faster. What do you mean? Marie took a deep breath. Remember when we used to have those monthly dinners? Girls' nights. I nodded. Nova used to talk about you a lot. Not the way a daughter-in-law should talk about her husband's mother. The coffee shop suddenly felt too hot. What did she say? She called you her personal ATM. She used to laugh about how easy it was to get money out of you. She'd plan out these elaborate stories about Byron needing something or David's business struggling, and she'd practice her delivery on us. Each word hit me like a physical blow. She said the key was making you think you were being generous instead of being used. She'd talk about what buttons to push, your guilt about not being around enough when David was little, your fear of missing out on Byron's childhood, your worry about being seen as stingy. I thought about all those conversations over the years, all those carefully worded requests that had made me feel like such a loving grandmother. There's more, Marie said. Quietly. She used to complain about having to include you in family events. She said David insisted on inviting you, but she wished you'd just send a check and stay home. The birthday party. It all made sense now. Nova hadn't forgotten to include me by accident. She'd been working up to excluding me for years. Why didn't you tell me this before? I asked. Marie's eyes filled with tears. Because I was just as bad. I was jealous of how much help you gave them. My mother-in-law was nothing like you, and I used to think Nova was so lucky. I convinced myself she was just venting, that she didn't really mean it. What changed your mind? She tried to get me to lend them money. After you cut them off, she came to me with this sob story about how you'd had a mental breakdown and abandoned them. She wanted $5,000 for Byron's school fees. Marie laughed bitterly. When I said I didn't have that kind of money, she suggested I could take out a credit card cash advance. That's when I realized she really would use anyone. I sat there, feeling sick and validated at the same time. Sick because the woman I'd treated like a daughter had been laughing at me. Validated because my instincts about the birthday party had been right. It was deliberate cruelty. There's something else, Marie said about David. I braced myself. He knew about what Nova said. About how she really felt about you. He was there for most of those dinners. The last piece of my heart that had been holding out hope for my son crumbled. It was one thing to be weak, manipulated. It was another entirely to sit there while your wife mocked and planned to exploit his own mother. He never said anything? I whispered. He laughed, Harriet. He thought it was funny how good Nova was at managing you. I excused myself and threw up in the bathroom. When I came back, Marie was crying. I'm so sorry. I should have told you years ago. Thank you for telling me now. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Maybe they'll learn something from having to take care of themselves. But as I drove home, I wasn't thinking about them learning. I was thinking about Byron and whether he was learning the wrong lessons about family, about love. That evening, I drove by their old house. New owners had moved in, the place transformed. Different children's bicycles sat in the driveway. A different family was making different memories there. I found myself wondering where David and Nova were living now, what Byron's new school was like. Part of me wanted to find out, but what would be the point? Instead, I went home and pulled out the letter I'd written to Byron months earlier. I read it again, then added a new paragraph. Your parents made choices, Byron, and so did I. I chose to stop letting them take advantage of me even though I knew it would hurt you in the short term. I hope someday you'll understand that enabling someone isn't the same as loving them, and that the hardest thing about real love is sometimes knowing when to step back and let people face the consequences of their own decisions. I sealed it and put it back in my jewelry box. Then I sat down with a glass of wine and really thought about my life. Who was I when I wasn't defined by David and Nova's needs? What did I actually want to do with my time, my money, my energy? The answers came slowly. I wanted to travel, take art classes, volunteer somewhere that appreciated my help. I wanted to build a life that was mine. The revelation of Nova's true feelings had hurt, but it had also freed me from any lingering guilt. I hadn't abandoned my family. I'd stopped enabling people who saw me as nothing more than a source of funding. There was a difference. And for the first time since that birthday party, I felt truly at peace with my choice. The silence continued, but it no longer felt like punishment. It felt like freedom. And freedom, I was learning, was worth more than all the gratitude money could buy. 1 year later, I was in my kitchen, making tea, when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw a thin boy with unruly brown hair, shifting nervously on my porch. It took me a moment to realize it was Byron. He'd grown at least 3 inches. There was something different about his face, less round, more serious. He looked like a child who'd learned things he shouldn't have had to learn yet. My hands shook as I opened the door. Byron? Hi, Grandma. His voice was quieter, more careful. Dad said I could come see you if I wanted to. He's waiting in the car. I looked past him and saw David's truck parked at the curb, David staring straight ahead. He didn't wave, but he'd brought Byron. That had to mean something. Would you like to come in? Byron nodded, perching on the edge of my couch like he was ready to bolt. My heart broke a little at how uncertain he seemed. How are you, sweetheart? I'm okay. The automatic response of a child who'd learned not to complain. I like my new school. It's smaller than my old one, but it's okay. And your mom and dad? Byron's expression shuddered slightly. They're okay too. Dad works a lot now. Mom works at a restaurant. She's really tired all the time. I wanted to ask a million questions, but something about his careful answers warned me to go slow. Instead, are you hungry? I could make you a sandwich. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Do you still have those cookies? The ones with the chocolate chips. I think I can find some. I'd actually baked a batch just last week, foolishly hoping Byron might show up. In the kitchen, as I arranged cookies on a plate, Byron wandered around, reacquainting himself with a place from a dream. He stopped in front of my refrigerator where I used to display all his school pictures. You took them down, he said quietly. The photos. I'd packed them away months ago because looking at them hurt too much. I thought you might not want me to have them anymore. Byron considered this with the gravity of someone much older than 9. Can I see them? I retrieved the box from my closet and spread the pictures across the kitchen table. Byron studied them intently, picking up a first-grade drawing of our family. Stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. I remember making this, he said. You put it on your refrigerator right away. It was beautiful. It still is. Byron set the drawing down and looked at me directly for the first time. Mom says you stopped loving us. The words hit me. I sat down across from him, choosing my response carefully. What do you think? I think. Byron paused, biting his lip. I think maybe you just got tired of being sad. The wisdom in his simple statement took my breath away. What makes you think I was sad? You always looked sad at our house. Even when you were smiling, like when you gave me presents or came to my games, you looked happy, but also sad underneath. I had to swallow hard. You're very observant. Mom and Dad used to fight about you sometimes. After you left, Dad said Mom was mean to you, and Mom said you were mean first, but I don't think you're mean, Grandma. What do you think? Byron picked up a cookie. I think grown-ups make things too complicated. I missed you, but Mom said you didn't want to see me anymore because you were mad at her and Dad. That's not true, Byron. I wanted to see you every single day. Then why didn't you call me? The question I'd been dreading. How do you explain to a 9-year-old that his parents had used him as a weapon? Because I thought it might make things harder for you. Sometimes adults have to make decisions that don't feel good but might be better in the long run. Byron nodded solemnly. Like when you made Dad get a real job. The comment caught me off guard. What do you mean? Dad works really hard now. He gets up early and comes home tired, but I don't know, different. Less worried all the time. And Mom, too. She complains about her job, but she seems prouder than before. I studied his face, seeing a maturity there that hadn't existed a year ago. Are you proud of them? Yeah, Byron said without hesitation. It was scary at first when we had to move and change schools and everything, but now it feels more real, I guess. Like we're doing it ourselves instead of. He trailed off. Instead of what? Instead of pretending. The word hung in the air. This child had understood something that had taken me years to figure out. The life I'd been funding wasn't real. It was a performance, a beautiful illusion built on someone else's foundation. Byron, I said carefully, do you understand why I stopped helping with money? He nodded. Because they were being mean to you and because they needed to learn how to take care of themselves. Are you angry with me? Byron considered this seriously. I was at first. I missed my old room and my old school and having money for things I wanted. But then I realized I still had everything important. Like what? Like mom and dad and my friends. I made new ones. And books from the library instead of always buying new ones. He smiled shyly. And now I'm here with you. I reached across the table and took his small hand in mine. I missed you so much. I missed you too. That's why I asked Dad if I could come see you. I told him I understood why you were upset and that I wanted to see if you still loved me. The simple honesty brought tears to my eyes. What did he say? He said he'd been wanting to bring me for a while, but he was scared you'd be mad at him. Byron squeezed my hand. Are you mad at him? I looked out the window at David's truck, where my son sat waiting. I'm sad about some things that happened, but I love your dad and I love you. What about Mom? The harder question. I hope your mom is learning to be happy with the life she and your dad are building together. Byron seemed to accept this diplomatic non-answer. We spent the next hour looking through photo albums and talking about his new school, his new friends, his new life. He told me about helping his dad with work projects, about his mom teaching him to cook simple meals, about feeling proud when his teacher complimented his improved math skills. The boy who'd once had everything handed to him was discovering the satisfaction of earning things himself. When it was time to go, Byron hugged me tight. Can I come see you again? Anytime you want to, but you should ask your parents first. I will. He pulled back and looked at me seriously. Grandma, I think what you did was brave. What do you mean? You stopped pretending too. That's brave. As I watched David's truck pull away, Byron waving from the passenger window, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete peace. Not the fragile peace that depends on everything going your way, but the deep, lasting peace that comes from living authentically. I'd lost a son and daughter-in-law who only valued me for my money. But I'd found myself again. And apparently, I hadn't lost my grandson after all. Byron had found his way back to me on his own terms, with his own understanding of what had happened. 6 months after Byron's first visit, he started coming over every other Saturday. David would drop him off and pick him up, and gradually, those exchanges became less tense. We never discussed the past directly, but I could see in David's eyes a grudging respect for the choice I'd made. Nova never came, and I was fine with that. Some relationships can't be repaired, and trying to force reconciliation often makes things worse. But Byron and I rebuilt our relationship slowly, on a foundation of honesty instead of obligation. I taught him to garden and cook and manage money responsibly. He taught me that love doesn't require funding, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the opportunity to discover their own strength. On my 70th birthday, Byron gave me a card he'd made himself. Inside, in his careful handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for teaching me that real love doesn't cost anything." I kept that card next to the letter I'd written him during our separation. The letter I'd never had to give him, because he'd figured out the truth all by himself. That night, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine, listening to the sounds of my neighbors living their lives. Mrs. Patterson called over the fence to ask how my birthday had been. A young family down the street was having a barbecue, their laughter drifting through the evening air. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. I was free, but I wasn't isolated. I had learned the difference between being loved and being used. And I had chosen love, even when it meant losing people who couldn't tell the difference. The woman who'd sat silently at that birthday party, too afraid to demand the respect she deserved, was gone. In her place was someone stronger. Someone who understood that you can't buy your way into a family that truly loves you. Because a family that truly loves you would never make you try. Now, I'm curious about you. What would you have done if you were in my place? Have you ever faced a similar situation where you had to choose between your peace and keeping a difficult family dynamic alive? Tell me what you think. I really want to know.